Today we're going to go over the answers to the Chapter 11 study guide. So number 1 says multiple alleles is a case in which there are more than 2 alleles, for example, blood type. Number 2 says polygenic inheritance is a case in which traits are controlled by 2 or more genes. So that would be things like hair color or skin color. Number 3 says codominance is when a gene for black feathers and a gene for white feathers produces a checkered chicken. So remember, that's when 2 traits don't hide each other when they're present in a heterozygous genotype. Number 4 says incomplete dominance is when a red gene and a white gene produce pink flowers. So incomplete dominance is when the dominant trait cannot fully hide the recessive trait. Number 5 says non-disjunction occurs when homologous chromosomes don't separate properly in meiosis. Number 6 says sex chromosomes are the 23rd pair of chromosomes. And number 7 says that autosomes are the first 22 pairs of chromosomes. Number 8 says that different variations of genes are called alleles. So remember, all those different versions are alleles. That's what's represented by the letters that we use when we do like Punnett squares. Number 9 says the expression of genes or the appearance of something is called its phenotype. So remember, phenotype is the physical expression of a trait. Number 10, a trait located on the X chromosome is called a sex-linked trait or an X-linked trait. Number 11, a trait that is always expressed is the dominant trait. And a trait, number 12, that can be hidden and only shows up when you have 2 of them is known as a recessive trait. Number 13 says that Mendel, or Gregor Mendel, is the father of modern genetics. Remember, he's the monk from Austria. He bred a lot of peas and he taught us a lot about inheritance patterns. Number 14, a box used to predict the outcome of a genetic crosses is called a Punnett square. And number 15 says the specific alleles of an organism, such as capital T, small t, is known as a genotype. So remember, anytime you have that sequence of letters, that's called the genotype, and that's what produces the phenotype. Number 16 says that genetics is the study of traits and how they are passed on. And number 17, a picture that shows how traits are passed on is a pedigree. Number 18 says a person with PKU or phenylketonuria is missing the enzyme to break down phenylalanine and can cause cognitive impairment. Number 19 says that Huntington's disease is caused by a dominant allele. Number 20 says a person with sickle cell anemia has abnormally shaped red blood cells that can block circulation and damage organs. Number 21 says cystic fibrosis results in thick mucus building up in the lungs and digestive organs. Number 22 says the symptoms of Huntington's disease appear between the ages of 30 and 50. Number 23 says that a person with Tay-Sachs disease usually dies by about the age of 5. Number 24, a person with Tay-Sachs disease lacks the enzymes that break down a nervous system lipid, and so it causes nerve cell damage. Number 25 says that PKU or phenylketonuria can be controlled with diet. And then number 26 is referring to the picture above, and it says what abnormal process is shown in the picture above, and it's called non-disjunction. And you'll notice that it occurs when the chromosomes separate improperly. So normally a gamete cell would have half the number of the chromosomes of the parent cell, but here you can see 2 of the gametes have 3 chromosomes and the other 2 only have 1 chromosome. And so those will all potentially cause problems if those cells are fertilized or do fertilize an egg cell. And the name again of that process is non-disjunction. And number 27 says to name 3 diseases that are caused by the above process. And so chromosomal disorders include things like Down syndrome, Turner syndrome, and Klinefelter's syndrome. On this page, we're going to look at some different karyotypes. So number 28 says, which of the karyotypes above shows Turner syndrome? So if you remember, Turner syndrome is when you have only 1 X chromosome. And so you can see this image, letter B, only has 1 X chromosome. And then the next question says, how many chromosomes does it have? And so somebody who has Turner syndrome is missing a chromosome. Normally you'd have two X chromosomes because chromosomes always come in pairs. And so somebody with Turner syndrome has 45 chromosomes instead of 46 chromosomes. Number 29 says which of the above karyotypes shows Down syndrome. And if you remember, the other name for Down syndrome is trisomy 21. And if you look, you'll see there's 3 copies of chromosome 21 in karyotype C. And so that's what a Down syndrome karyotype looks like. And because they have an extra chromosome, people with Down syndrome have 47 chromosomes. And number 30 says which of the above karyotypes shows Klinefelter syndrome. And Klinefelter syndrome occurs when somebody has 2 X chromosomes and a Y chromosome. So if you look at the sex chromosomes here, you can see normally where you have a pair of sex chromosomes, whether it's 2 X's or an X and a Y, this person has 3 sex chromosomes. And so letter A is the Klinefelter syndrome karyotype, and they have 47 chromosomes. Number 31 says which of the above karyotypes shows typical female chromosomes. Typically, females are born with 2 X chromosomes. So you can see that's karyotype B. 32 says which of the above karyotypes shows typical male chromosomes. Typically, males are born with an X chromosome and a Y chromosome, so that's karyotype A. And then number 33 says how many chromosomes does a typical human have? So most humans that do not have chromosomal disorders have 46 chromosomes. The next several questions are about a pedigree. So before we talk about the answers, let's review how to read a pedigree. Remember that squares represent males, and if they're filled in or shaded, they are showing the trait that we're following in this pedigree. Circles represent females, and shaded circles represent females carrying the trait that we are following. So number 34 says, is this a recessive or a dominant trait? So remember, the trait is the one that is present in the shaded individuals. We don't know what it is, but we know that they have it. If somebody does not have parents that have the trait, then it's probably recessive. So in this example, this person has this trait, whatever it is, but their parents do not have the trait, which means that their parents are probably heterozygous and that this trait is recessive. Number 35 says generation 1 has a father and a mother. How many offspring do they have? And so remember, these lines that drop down from the parents, there's 1, 2, 3, those all indicate that those are their children. So they have 3 children. Number 36 says how many generations are shown in this pedigree, and that's represented by these Roman numerals on the side. So if you scope those out, notice there's 3 generations. Number 37 says how many males are shown in this pedigree. So again, the males are represented by the square shapes, so you can count them up. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's going to be 4 males that are represented on this karyotype. Number 38 says how many females are shown, and again, females are represented by circles. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 that are, 5 that are females. So you can go ahead and write 5 on the line. And then number 39 says use the letters big T and small t and write down the genotype of the square in generation 1. So the square in generation 1 is this father. And if we assume that this is a recessive pedigree and he has a child who has the trait, his genotype has to be heterozygous, which is big T, small t.